Hey guys, welcome to week 2. We are going to quickly go over what I have bought for this week's of our month of eating whole, healthy foods and organic where possible on a budget. So let's get to it. I didn't buy a lot of dry goods this week, but what I'm going to do is I am going to put the prices as I go on the screen so you know how much I spent on each item. We got 2 bags of organic chips, tortillas, 2 boxes of organic mac and cheese, salsa. I did buy 100% maple syrup. This is one thing that when we first started changing our diets, I had no idea that the maple syrup that I had grown up with wasn't maple syrup. So while this is expensive, $8.99 for this little thing, you can get it at Costco for quite a bit cheaper, or sometimes at a farmer's market for cheaper. But this is what I had to buy this week. And this will last a long time because maple syrup, real maple syrup, is so much stronger and sweeter of a flavor than Aunt Jemima. So use a lot less of it as well. Olives. A spring mix greens container, 4 beets. I do a root vegetable hash, and you'll see that later in the video, but it's all root vegetables, and it's so good, and I serve it with eggs, so that's what the beets are for. 4 cucumbers, 4 avocados. Now, I normally also get bell peppers, but the store was out of those today, so I bought mini peppers. They will work just fine. It's just a little bit more cutting. A bag of carrots, a bag of celery, cilantro, a whole bunch of bananas, 3 bunches of them, cauliflower, broccoli, can't really see it from back there, broccoli. Now, I bought cabbage because we are going to be making our own fermented sauerkraut this week. It's a great side to have on hand, super good for you. And this cabbage was like $1.40, so it's very, very inexpensive as a side for different meals. 5 pounds of mandarin oranges. These my kids love. They're just a super quick, easy snack that they can grab. And really great for packing for lunches and stuff. A dozen eggs because we had some left over from last week. Frozen things, I got green beans, corn, and sweet peas. I also got 1 more bag of fruit medley. We had half a bag of frozen pineapple left over, so just one of these will serve us plenty well for our smoothie this week. Colby Jack. 1 pound of ground beef. This is the only meat I bought this week, and it was $5.29. So that's why I only got 1. 2 canisters. Is that what you call these, canisters? 2 jugs? They're not really jugs. 2 things of almond milk. So I don't know if I explained it in my previous videos or not, but the way that I planned this month was 1 week kind of per starch. So the first week I was heavy on rice. This week I have a few potato recipes. Next week I think is either millet or quinoa, and then the following week is the other one. So I did that mostly for this. I buy a 10-pound bag of potatoes, and I want to make sure that I use most of it. So if I have a week that we just eat a lot of potatoes, then I know that we're going to go through at least a decent amount of this. Sweet potatoes. This is also for my root veggie hash recipe, and onions, of course. one store, Meijer, I spent $19.46. At Aldi, I spent $62.74. And I did actually have to go to a smaller, more expensive store this week because Aldi and Meijer were, well, Aldi never carries beets. Meijer was out of the loose bulk beets this week, and so I had to stop at Family Fair. So I bought the beets and they were $2.31. So my total for this week, week 2, was $84.51. My estimate for the week was $91, so I came in under my anticipated budget for 2 weeks in a row now, which I'm feeling really good about, especially considering I spent $9 on maple syrup. So next we're gonna go into what we actually made this week out of these goods and how that all happened. All right, so for week 2, here is what we ate. For breakfast this week, we had 3 mornings where we did overnight oats. Now this is a great way to save a ton of time in the morning when you are trying to hurry to get out the door in the morning. We tend to make this breakfast on mornings that we have obligations so that I don't have to spend 30 minutes making breakfast in the morning, and it works great. We had one morning that we had smoothies. We had one morning that we made pancakes, and this morning happened to be Valentine's Day, so I made some heart pancakes. Now, a quick note on the recipe that I will link below for this is we tend to use way more liquid than what the recipe calls for, probably about double. I don't know exactly the liquid that we use, but it's more of a feel for what a pancake batter consistency should be like. We had one morning where we made oatmeal bake, and we had one morning where we had oatmeal with peanut butter added to it. For our snacks this week, we did the same as usual, and those options were apples, carrots, popcorn, bananas, or oranges. Day 1, we had packed lunches for lunch that day, and I made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with the bread that I had made 2 days prior. I also added walnuts, cucumbers, carrots, and oranges to my kids and my husband's packed lunches. And I was home that day, and so I made my own salad, and I had eggs with toast. For dinner that evening, we made loaded baked potatoes, and this was just baked potatoes with cooked broccoli and cauliflower with corn and chickpeas. And then I browned the ground beef and I added diced onion to it. Now I also baked extra potatoes this evening for our lunch the next day. I tend to usually do this with most starch type of things. If I'm cooking rice, I typically make a larger batch than I know we will eat that night so that I don't have to cook it the next day. So that evening I baked extra potatoes knowing that I would use them for lunch the next day. I also set some of the ground beef aside to use the following lunch, which was on day 2, and we had fried potatoes with ground beef, eggs, green beans, and sliced apples. For dinner that evening, we had split pea soup and garlic bread. Now, another quick note, I promise I followed recipes, but typically when I use a recipe, I use a little bit of my own judgment, and a lot of times I will over double the vegetable count for a lot of soups. So this soup, I definitely doubled at least the carrot, celery, and onion that the recipe called for. I also used thyme instead of rosemary because that's what I had on hand. So day 3 for lunch, I had to pack a lunch for my 2 boys, and they had a homeschool camp that they attended that day. So they had cucumbers, peppers, cheese, walnuts, and bananas. And my daughter and I and her friend were over for lunch, and we had leftover pea soup with cucumbers and peppers. Dinner that evening, this is probably one of my favorite recipes that we do, and it is a root vegetable hash. And all I do is I dice up regular potatoes, sweet potatoes, beets, carrots, and onions, into probably like a 1/2 inch to an inch cube. And I put those things in a giant bowl, and then I add seasoning and oil. So I melt coconut oil, I drizzle that over top, and I add seasoning. And I don't measure it, but I just kind of dump on top salt, pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, thyme, parsley, and paprika. You can use your own judgment how well you liked things seasoned or not. We like them well seasoned. Once your mixture is well seasoned, then you are going to want to bake it for about 30 to 40 minutes at 400 degrees. And then I fried eggs to go on top of this, and we also topped with hot sauce, and my kids really like to put ketchup on their hash. I tend to just like my over easy eggs sliced up and eaten with the hash directly. Day 4, we had that leftover hash with chickpeas, and I just made like a ketchup mayo dipping sauce for it. Dinner that evening was black bean soup with avocado, lime, and cilantro. Same goes for this soup. I definitely added more vegetables than what the recipe called for. Day 5, again, this is our Friday tradition. We had mac and cheese and peas and cucumbers. For dinner that evening, we had a large salad with all the toppings. Day 6, lunch, we just went through the fridge and took out things that needed to be eaten. So I think we had some like leftover mac and cheese, we had some green beans, we had a little bit of pea soup, and it wasn't quite enough of leftovers, so we made a drinkable smoothie to go with it. For dinner that evening, we had rice and lentil tacos, and we topped those tacos with avocado, cheese, salsa, and had chips on the side. Because I only had 6 shells that day, we also had seconds, and we just had the taco filling and the toppings, and then we used it as like a chip dip, and that works great too. That day, I made bread again for the following week. And on day 7, we had leftover black bean soup for lunch. Dinner on day 7, we kind of last minute decided to have dinner with friends, and so I brought basically what we were going to eat for dinner. So I just brought the salad that we were planning on making, and I brought over the loaf of bread that I had made the day before. So that wraps up week 2, and I hope that you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up down below and click subscribe so that you can be notified when I come out with week 3 and week 4. Thanks for watching.